class in a major way here. Thank you very much for taking time out of whatever else you were doing. If you were sacrificing missing Monday Night Football or something that you think would have been more fun, don't worry, this will beat that hands down. So we're very lucky to have with us a couple of people who are, I would say, distinguished alums from here at USC. We'll start with the dog. So this is Tofu. As you can see, one thing we've been talking about quite a bit is that Tofu is not like the dog that you take pictures of and put on Instagram. Tofu has, as you all can witness, it has a presence about her. There's just a difference between me posting pictures of my goofy dog and Tofu. So we're going to hear a lot about that. But we have with us also the person to tell Tofu's story and her own, more importantly, Tiffany Luke from right here at USC. Tiffany and I have crossed paths a couple of times. Most importantly, last year we did something similar, but it was in a single classroom around the corner. And so when I reached out to the other professors and said, hey, we have this person, she's amazing, and Tofu's not so bad either. That's what led to where we are tonight. So we're very lucky. Tiffany, I'm going to let you tell your own story, but she has 2 degrees from USC, most recently an MBA from Marshall. So she has been where you all are in one form or another. In fact, even had a class in this room, I think, at one point. Maybe.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I would always sit on the second row.
Yeah, there you go. So she has been where you are and beyond. And so that's what we're going to hear quite a bit about tonight. A little bit about her story and about Tofu's story and Boshi. Boshi couldn't be here tonight, prior engagement. We understand. For those of you who follow Tofu and Boshi on various socials, you'll know that's unfortunate that we don't have Boshi, but we have Tofu and she's doing great. So we're going to hear a little bit about how this whole thing started with Tofu, and we're also going to talk. This isn't just going to be a conversation about isn't it fun to post cute pictures of a dog on social media. One of the reasons that I thought this was important to have this conversation is that Tiffany has more to her story than just, hey, I took a picture and it worked and now look where I am. She has been navigating all the different challenges that go with being a content creator. I would use, in fact, the term content entrepreneur. So across all the different social platforms, we'll get into quite a bit of that and all that comes with it as well. So we'll talk a little bit about some of those challenges and some of the things that make this it's not all vomiting rainbows and cute little, trending things on TikTok. There's some more to it than that. So without further ado, I don't know if we should clap because we don't want to freak her out, but she should be okay. She's a pro. Right there. So, yeah, Tofu and Tiffany, welcome. Yeah, she's totally got this. Okay, so Tiffany, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you taking time. I know you don't live around the corner, so this is a bit of a hike. Last year, by the way, with COVID and everything else, it was a challenge to get big groups together, and we ended up doing one of the sessions on Zoom. And while that was very nice of you, it was not quite the same effect as having Tofu in person and hearing from you in person. So that was very nice of you, but this is better for all of us. So I mentioned that you went to USC. I'm curious to start with just a little bit about your background. I take it that you didn't come to USC and plan to go to Marshall with the thought of graduating from Marshall and immediately jumping into being a social media creator and off to the races, right?
No. When I came here for my undergrad at Marshall, my big plan was I really wanted to work in entertainment marketing. So that was like my big goal. My dream company was to represent Disney and do marketing for them. And that's kind of what I set out to do. And it wasn't until a few years later, like after I graduated, when I got to Lulu and her account, I started her account for her.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I think it's important to point out because I think many people in this room, obviously they have plans, they have goals. I don't know how many of them have a goal that is become a social media superstar at this point, but you never know where things will take you. And I think a lot of the foundation that you're learning here will probably benefit you no matter where you end up. But should you end up down this path, I'm quite certain that the lessons that you learned here have paid off. So let's talk a little bit. That's good background for you. Now let's talk about Tofu. How old is Tofu?
Tofu is 6 right now, and she's turning 7 in October. Her birthday is October 22nd, 2015. So I can't believe she's already turning 7. It's one of those things where she was just a puppy to me, and I blinked, and now she's a full-grown adult.
Yeah, so she's turning 7 this year, and when you got Tofu, was the plan? Okay, let's just put some pictures up on Instagram like everyone does. And was it your Instagram at first, your just regular Instagram account, or did you start an Instagram account for Tofu to spare every one of your friends from not having to see your dog all the time?
Yeah, that was how it started. I got Tofu and I was like in love with her. I was like, I need to post photos of her all the time, and then I realized I was doing that thing where like I would post every single day about Tofu, and I was like, oh god, my friends are gonna be so sick of just seeing puppy photos all the time. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna start a separate account for her, and then that way I can use it as like a personal diary of just seeing how she grows up, and whoever is interested in following Tofu could follow along. And that's kind of how it started. When I was posting, it was just supposed to be for fun. I didn't mean, like, there was no goal to become a content creator or grow her following. In the early days of Instagram, like, I think, like, when it first started back in 2015, I would just add a few, like, hashtags. So I just, like, would do, like, Tofu's first time at the vet, hashtag first vet visit, hashtag Corgi. And then randomly, there was, like, a week where all of a sudden, I think people found us through the hashtags, and we grew, like, 10,000 followers in a week. And then I was just like, and kind of just kept going from there.
She's like, keep going.
Yeah.
I think Tofu, that response was, are you surprised? I mean, look at it's fascinating. It always amazes me how people go from one day, just a few friends following to the next thing. You never know what might blow up. So it's interesting that it was hashtags that caught on. Because I remember was there one post in particular that seemed to be, I think, kind of mentioned something about a vomiting rainbow.
Oh, so like once it got to 10,000 followers, it was from like the initial, like just from photos. And I don't really know which singular photo did it, but it was just like at that time so when I got Tofu, she was only 3 pounds. Like she literally fit on the palm of my hand. And she was very cute, and I think her cute, like people would just stumble upon the hashtag, see a cute corgi, follow it. But the one that really like grew our account was back. Does anybody here use Snapchat? Mm-hmm. Or used to use Snapchat? There used to be this filter where you could put it on, and you open your mouth and a rainbow like spills out of your mouth. And then I did it on Tofu, and the rainbow, it worked on her surprisingly. And I shared that video on our Instagram, and it got shared by this really big page called 9gag. And I think at the time 9gag their Instagram account had like 20 million followers or something like that. And it was like, I was sitting in the car with, my parents are here too. I was sitting in the car with my parents when it happened, and the second they shared our video, like all the followers just started coming in. And I think in that one day, we got like 10,000 followers, and we were up to like 35,000 by the end of that.
Wow.
And then we've been very lucky since then. There have been a couple other videos of ours that have gone pretty viral, and just kind of keeps growing our platform.
It's amazing. And so all of that was just Instagram at the time, right?
Just Instagram at the
Just
time.
Instagram. So we'll talk about some of the other channels that you're on as well. I did mention Boshi. So for those of you who can follow along, Tofu has a brother. So talk a little bit about Boshi. Boshi, as we mentioned, couldn't be here, but I don't want to shortchange Boshi because he's great too.
So Boshi is my second corgi. He's turning 3 this year, which I'm also in shock. But I got Boshi in January 2020. And I was like, okay, I learned so much from raising Tofu. I'm going to do everything right this time. And then the world shut down and I couldn't do anything with him. So Tofu, if you don't follow my our accounts, Tofu is the calmer one. So she likes to be left alone. She likes to nap all day, and she doesn't like cuddling with me. She likes to cuddle with strangers, but not me. But Boshi's a cuddle bug. He loves being the center of attention, and he's like always. He's just full of energy. And so it's just like a funny contrast on how we have this like calm older sister and like energetic younger brother. And like something else that's pretty unique about him is that one of his ears flops downwards, which is not typical for a corgi. But when he's really excited, so like when he sees food or when he sees somebody he really likes, that ear goes up.
So since you mentioned the ear going up and down, I think this would be a good time to start introducing some of the, might not describe this as a challenge, but just in following your account, I think it's interesting to see some of the reaction. Can you talk a little bit about how people have responded to the ear? Obviously, it's adorable. It's almost, I don't want to say it's better, but you see this, adorable corgi, and there's one ear up and one ear down, which is like so unique and super cute. But not everyone finds it unique and super cute, right?
No. I have gotten some like upset people about Boshi's ear. So within the corgi community, like the corgi standard is to have the ears perked up like Tofu here, and anything like that is not 2 ears perked up is kind of like looked upon not so great. I've had several people who told me like, wow, I can't believe you would put his ear down on purpose like that for like the clout. And I was like, no, I actually spent a lot of time trying to get his ear up. I fed him cottage cheese, yogurt, and that's like the go-to thing. I even taped his ears up for 2 weeks, but it just didn't want to go up. And I guess for me, I'm not showing my dog, so having his ear fully up wasn't something that he needed to have. But for health reasons, it is better to have the ear up because it prevents ear infections. But I've just accepted that his ear flops down, and there are some people who don't like it, but at the end of the day, he's my dog, and I love him for however he is.
Yeah. So I remember reading your post about that, and you mentioned that for health reasons, as the parent of a floppy-eared dog. As a parent of a floppy-eared dog, I was very hyper aware of that because we definitely had to deal with that exact thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, my wife was like, "How do we get our dog's ears to go up?"
No, his ear's fine. It's just I also had my previous dog before Tofu was also floppy eared down, and she also had ear infections a lot.
Yeah, I was at that on Friday. It happened. So, are we done?
I think she needs some payment.
Okay, stay engaged. So, you started just taking pictures and and it wasn't about seeing what worked, it was just about sharing tofu, right? Talk a little bit about Tofu's voice, and I don't mean her bark. I mean, like, your account clearly has a voice, it has a tone to it, and I know when we've talked before, you talked about whether you would be the voice of Tofu, whether Tofu would be herself, you don't necessarily use, or sometimes you might use sort of the automated voice on social media, but how did you establish the tone and the way that you approach her account?
Yeah, So initially when I started her account, I wrote everything as if I was Tofu. So like I would write the captions for like what I think Tofu's thinking at the time. And then like when people would comment things like Tofu, you're so cute, I'd be like, thank you, I know. But it kind of got weird. Definitely as time went by, and I even like after I got Boshi especially, it was kind of weird because I was like, oh, like sometimes I'm gonna be posting things that are just Boshi, but if I write it out as if it's like from him, people might think that Boshi is Tofu or get confused. So when I got Boshi, I think that was the time when I started writing things from my perspective, and I call myself CorgMom on our accounts. So I started writing things from my end, and I think it's been working a lot better, and it's also like led to less confusion between the two dogs. But I do sometimes still like slip up and like do like dog talk whenever I'm writing things, writing messages or things like that. And I think like right now I'm trying to integrate, like when we do narrations and videos and stuff, I'm trying to integrate my own voice instead, because I feel like the robot voice is like super nice, but I feel like using my voice adds a more personal touch to it.
Yeah.
And like I can tell Tofu and Boshi's story better than like a monotone robot.
So, so from sort of feeling that out and figuring that out to also sort of adapting to the trends that are just ever present. That's one of the other things that I've noticed quite a bit, is that you seem to be right on top of them kind of all the time. One, I would love to know how you do that, but two, or maybe in reverse, the first question is, what made you decide, okay, we've gone from, like a lot of people are suddenly following us, I need to stay on top of trends? Was that your thinking, or is just you spent more time with the account, decided you're on social all the time, that you would just start following the trends? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know for me, like I didn't really come out with the goal to be on top of the trends. I just use TikTok a lot. I use TikTok every day, just for my own viewing pleasure. And then when I do that, what I tend to do is I'm watching these trends, and when I see a trend happening, I'm like, okay, that's fun. Like, how can I do like a Tofu and Boshi version of this? And then I like save it and bookmark it. And then when Tofu and Boshi are in the mood to film or like do tricks, then we'll film and get through those. It's definitely hard though, because I think right now with all the trends that are happening, I was talking to my other content creator friends how we feel like there's a bit of like a trend fatigue right now, because it seems like whenever, like especially in the dog content creating community, whenever a trend comes out, essentially all the dog content creators just kind of remake the exact same video with the same text and stuff like that. And so if you follow a bunch of dog accounts, you end up getting like 5 or so videos in a row that are like the same trend, same music, same text. So something I have been working on right now is I kind of want to start creating things that are less trend based, but I still enjoy making the trend based videos, but adding that like nice balance into the mix.
Yeah, so are we good? Yeah, okay. So you touched on something there I think is important, and I'm really curious about. You said you spent a ton of time on TikTok. You started on Instagram.
Yeah.
You have a following on YouTube. That's pretty substantial as well. But in terms of numbers, I didn't say the numbers. I forgot to say the numbers. But 1.5 billion, I think, is the last I checked on TikTok. So TikTok is, compared to Boshi, to Tofu rather, new. And TikTok is, we've been on TikTok for how long?
I've been on TikTok since late 2018.
So very, very early.
I attribute most of my success on building our TikTok audience to being really early on the platform.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you, at that point, it must have just been bought, and it was
Yes.
transitioning from Musical.ly to being TikTok?
Yep.
And at the time, I'm assuming then you didn't have much of a following, didn't have that much of an audience, but you liked the platform and just went with it?
Yeah, I think so back when I was on Instagram purely, it was mostly just a lot of photos that I was posting. but I kind of wanted to start making video content, and I think what triggered that really was like, so I used to work in marketing at Disney, and when all the meetings that I talked to with the reps, they kind of all mentioned that they were trying to move away from like photo-based things to video-based things. So I was like, okay, it seems like we're all moving towards video, and it seems like TikTok seems to be getting some traction a little bit with after the whole transition from Musical.ly to TikTok, and I heard a lot of things about Douyin as well. And so I was like, okay, it seems like something's happening here. I'm gonna try. And my original strategy for TikTok was I was like, okay, I have a bunch of videos of Tofu just doing her tofu things. Why not just like when I post it on Instagram, just throw that video on TikTok too, and then see what happens. Because I already have the videos anyway. But then like when I started using TikTok, I was like, oh, like there are these like really fun trends, and like I was like, oh, like I like start. And I think like anybody here who uses TikTok, you know that like when you use TikTok, you kind of learn these like inside jokes that you can only understand if you use TikTok. And I started like learning those, and I was like, oh, this is actually like quite fun. So I ended up doing like I think the first video of ours on TikTok that like went viral was there was this trend back in 2019, early 2019, where it's Adele singing and it's her voice, but then like but then it's the sound transitions into the audience singing the Adele song. And the video that you're supposed to make is you like one person would get like one gummy bear, right, when Adele was singing, and the camera would shift to the other side where there were like 100 gummy bears, like they were the audience singing. So I did that with Tofu, where Tofu was singing, and then when you pan the camera, it's like our collection of Corgi plushies that I had. I had like 40 or 50 at the time. And then that just went viral, and it kind of started our account. And I think because we were so early, our viral video got noticed by somebody at TikTok, and they assigned us a manager there who would like help us troubleshoot, and like they would tell us what the upcoming trends were, and they really like helped us with our strategy and stuff like that.
So that's a huge advantage, obviously.
Yep, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you touched on one of the things that I wanted to mention too, or wanted to ask about, which is we've talked, I know in my classes, we talked quite a bit about how each of the platforms, I mean, at this point, they're all copying each other, all the way down to, we'll get it to BeReal soon. I'm not letting you off the hook, and you're going to be in my BeReal. but they're all copying each other.
Yes.
They all have some version of short form video. We have YouTube Shorts, we have Instagram Reels, we have Snapchat Spotlight.
Yeah.
So they all have their own version of a TikTok clone. TikTok's even doing it now with TikTok Now,
Yep.
Which is their BeReal clone. How do you navigate all the different platforms and trying to keep? So I guess one approach would be to just take your content, shoot it once, publish it everywhere, and try to make it work. Or do you try to do specific things for specific platforms?
For the most part, I just take the video and I just post it on every single platform. But the only exception is some TikTok videos don't make sense anywhere outside of TikTok. Like I feel like out of all the platforms, I think TikTok has the best algorithm, and I think because of that, like you get to see these inside jokes that only make sense on TikTok. So for the most part, when I create a video, I try to think like, okay, if I posted this on Instagram, would somebody understand what I was referencing or what this trend is about? And there's like I say, like 5% of the time I'd be like, okay, no, it's like a TikTok only. But for the most part, I always try to get the most use out of a video that I make, because it does take a while to make all the videos.
Right, and I mean, it's not like it's just your time.
Right. And I also did notice too that like originally when I went about making multiple accounts on different platforms, I thought there was a lot of overlap between the audiences. Like I thought, like if somebody followed me on Instagram, they would probably follow me on all the other platforms too. But I noticed actually that each platform has a distinctive, separate audience.
So that's interesting.
So that way, then like I was like, okay, I can just repost it because nobody's going to see the video 3 times. Because I just treat every platform like its own audience.
I did notice a few weeks ago there were lots of people posting on TikTok saying things like, "These are the people on Instagram that are in 3 months just hearing about corn."
I saw that trend too.
Which I thought was pretty funny.
But it's true. Like, I feel like when I always see the trends on Instagram later, but I think that also, like, that's why, like, our Instagram has been doing particularly well because I get my inspiration from TikTok. So when I post it onto Instagram, I'm usually the first one to post that trend. And the first one, I think what's the key thing on Instagram Reels for growth too, is being early on an audio. So if you can get to, like, if you post a video and the audio has not gone viral yet, and you're the first one to be in there, when the audio does go viral, your video gets pushed to the top of that audio and pushed into people's Instagram feeds. And so I think that's what, like, finding that inspiration from TikTok has helped me surprisingly grow a lot more on Instagram.
So from your perspective, it's okay that they essentially copy each other, the platforms copy each other, because you just, it makes it easier for you.
Yeah, it's easier for me.
To put all the content up. Okay. We talked quite a bit about that and what the benefits and the positives and negatives that might come from that. One of the things that we talked about is just that each of them had, when they launched, they weren't intended to copy, and they were all intended to be their own. They each had their own strengths.
Yeah.
And the more they sort of merge and copy each other, the more that strength kind of tends to get washed out. I think doing TikTok now is one that we're just I don't know if you really needed to do that, because BeReal was its own thing living over here. So since we're here, let's just talk about BeReal for a minute. I know you're on BeReal.
Mm-hmm.
One of my 2 friends on BeReal. I'm big. But I have posted a BeReal, and unlike every other platform, I have posted a BeReal photo. Some of the people in here know it because it's happened during class. I had to pause for a minute.
I've seen those.
Yeah. But the reality is I don't use BeReal. I post mine, I look at what you've posted, and I have one other, it's my niece, and I look at hers, and then I just move on. I don't do the discover, I don't click through. So I'm wondering, it feels harder to follow people, first of all, but do you think about BeReal as having potential, or do you think BeReal is, well, it was a gimmicky thing, they tried it, and a year from now we won't even be talking about it?
I think it's one of those things where I think I heard Instagram is also trying to implement a BeReal, and I think once like the TikTok one gets adopted by more people, and once the Instagram one does, I don't know if BeReal will be as big anymore.
Mm-hmm.
BeReal kind of reminds me a little bit of Clubhouse, which had its like moment where it was so hot, everybody was on Clubhouse and we were all listening to those rooms. But now, like, then Spotify opened their own version of Clubhouse. Then Twitter also has a similar one too. And then after that, Spaces. And now nobody I know uses Clubhouse anymore.
So I'm assuming that those in my class are smiling a little bit right now, because that's literally the example I used in class to talk about Clubhouse, because I agree, it may be the same thing, it may just be a feature that should live on all the platforms. I don't know, but I feel proud to be on it, because I don't think that many people, certainly no one I know, other than you and my niece, are on it. And I introduced it to my nieces, so that made me okay, so we talked about the various platforms, which I think is important, and how you handle sort of creating there. We talked about BeReal. Let's talk about, so tofu doesn't get this beautiful shiny coat just purely from genetics. You feed tofu some pretty premium, interesting food. I see it every day, and then I apologize to my dog. For what it's worth, now my dog is homemade food too. In fact,
That's a lot of work.
Today was dog food day, and my wife was like knee deep in raw chicken and liver and vegetable. But anyway, it's a mess. But I'm assuming that is one of the handful, or maybe more than a handful, of brand deals that you have, which is with the She's ridiculously poised, isn't she? So can you? I said that.
Did you want to come down? You good? Are you good? Do you want a treat?
So, talk to us about brand deals, because I'm sure you're presented with opportunities rather constantly. But as you start to talk about that, I just want to touch on the fact that you kind of glossed over it. In the very beginning, you said, I had aspirations to work at Disney. And then you kind of didn't talk about that anymore. And then later, you're like, I used to work at Disney. Wait, and you did it. You actually had aspirations to work at Disney, and you did it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty great. But now you don't do that.
No.
And instead, along with some other things, I know that you do other projects and things, but this is a significant part of what you do, right? Working with brands and Tofu and Boshi, and have found a way to leverage that into something meaningful, right, for your family.
Yeah, I'm a full-time content creator now.
Full-time content
So,
creator, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I get to spend time with my dogs. I can't complain.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, how do you decide who to work with? What's the thought process that goes through your mind? Because again, I'm assuming you're presented all the time with opportunities.
I am crazy picky with who I work with. I think like for every 20 offers I get, I only take one. I feel like for me, having spent so long, we have such a wonderful community of people who follow Tofu. And I know that when I recommend things or I show Tofu and Boshi using things, I know that people listen to that. People will ask me, where'd you get that? Where can I buy it from? And stuff like that. And when I started Tofu's account, I was just okay, out of respect to all the people who follow us, I will never ever promote something that I genuinely do not like, or I would not see myself using, no matter how much money is offered to me. So, as an example, the dog food brand that we're working with, their name is Darwin's. I actually fed Tofu and Boshi, Tofu at the time, Darwin's for a year before I reached out to them and was like, hey, I would love to work with you guys. Tofu really loves the food, and I even if I wasn't being sponsored by them, I would feed Tofu that every day for the rest of her life. And we've had other dog food brands have reached out to us, and one company offered us $5,000 plus a vacation to Texas for something, and they were like, if you will try our dog food and promote our dog food. And I was like, no, absolutely not, because I would never feed my dog this food. No offense, it was a good brand, but it's just not what I want in her diet. And yeah, it's just really important to me that my whatever sponsored collaboration and any kind of sponsored opportunity, I want people to know it's a genuine, it's coming from a genuine place. I don't want people to think this person, I'm sure a lot of you guys have followed some influencers where all they post is sponsored content. And it gets to this weird point where you're do they actually like this product? Is it just because they're being paid a lot of money? And I just never wanted people to think of Tofu and Boshi like that. Because it just seems kind of, I don't know, I just don't like that.
It's great. She was doing a little move there.
Do you want to come sit next to me? Or do you want us to come down? Okay.
Oh, she heard that it sits down? Okay, I'll lay down for a treat. I could just sit here and let you ask.
I could just look at her too.
So I appreciate the thoughtfulness. So you said it's 1 in 20 you end up working with, which is amazing.
It was one of those things where I actually never thought I could be full-time because I was so picky, and I even had friends who were they're offering you that, just take it and just do a post, that's it. I'm no, but what if somebody buys it and then it ends up being a bad product, or something, companies that always reach out to us are dog supplement companies, and I have a very strict supplement routine for her, and I will not deviate from that. And I'm what if somebody feeds their dog the supplements and the dog dies? I can't be responsible for that.
Right.
I will only recommend the supplements that that I'm using for her. And so like right now, like I was so lucky, and I feel like that's been a strength of our account because when brands come to us, they know that like that's like an extra like added value when they work with us. They know that we genuinely like their product. So for example, like with Boshi, he had really bad allergies when he was younger. And something that I found a supplement that I really liked, and I used it with him and it helped a lot with supporting like his allergy symptoms and stuff like that. And then that company reached out to us, and now we're doing like a 6-month-long partnership with them because they know that we love their product genuinely, and I'm happy to promote something that has worked for Boshi.
So to that end, and by the way, it seems like wow, I know a lot about your account. I'm not stalking, I'm just a super fan. That's different. But I do remember it seems like there was a product that I don't know if you maybe talked about it or showed it, but then you found that it wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
I didn't put that in
I'm happy to tell that story because I also want to warn people about things that. So like there was this company called Toby and Ace, and I will say their name because I genuinely think they I'll tell you the story. So they made this amazing dog bed, and this dog bed is like the best dog bed I've ever used in my life. Boshi is a really big digger, and he like was digging on that thing, and it did not dig through. It's comfortable. The Tofu and Boshi like to sleep in it every day. But then I started noticing that, like I was reading their comments one day, and I noticed they stopped shipping the product out to their customers. Like people had placed their orders back in October 2021, and even today they still have not received it. And I discovered this back in January. And in addition to that, they weren't gonna pay us for the post that we did for them. So I did work with them, and then this worked with them in October before they stopped shipping items. And they weren't gonna pay us. They eventually did pay us because I had to go through many methods, but they finally did pay us. But after they paid us, I did do a big Instagram story letting any of my followers know, if you purchased this dog bed from this company, contact me because they are not shipping products out, and I will tell you how you can get your money back. And so I spent a lot of time DMing, I think about 15 of my followers who purchased the beds, and I made sure that they all got their refunds because this company, in addition to not shipping out product, they were not offering refunds. Like they would just constantly keep on saying like, oh yeah, we're working on your refund. And now even if you go on their like company page, nobody has received any dog beds and nobody has received any refunds. And luckily for my followers, because I was able to catch it early, they were able to go file a claim with their bank. And so that's something that's also like important to me too, is I also always want to be honest. And it like didn't shine the best light on our account as somebody who promoted that, but I was like the second like I was like, okay, I need to like tell them about this because I owe it to them because they spent $300 on dog bed because we recommended it, and I can't represent a company like that anymore.
So I mean, it's a lesson, obviously, at least to some extent, in crisis management.
Yeah.
And some level of PR. And I think there are many people in here with maybe lessons in PR would tell you that I think you handled it exactly the way you're supposed to do it. You get ahead of it and be forthcoming and all of that, own it, and to the extent that it was yours to own.
I hope you just I felt so guilty about that because I was just like, oh gosh, like this is like an expensive dog bed, and it truly is a great product, which is why it's like such a shame. But I think the big lesson for me on that moving forward is I need to do a lot more research on the companies I work with. Even though the product might be great, like now I need to focus more on making sure the company is good as well.
It's a great time. And I appreciate you telling that story because I know I didn't have that in my notes ahead of time, but I just was kind of reminded. So let's talk a little bit. You said yourself, you're a full-time content creator now. I use the term content entrepreneur because you sell, you have plushies, and you have stickers, and you have other things. And I'm curious, I know at some point you obviously had to make that decision, just based on your own lifestyle and your family situation. But was there something? I'll talk and walk in the house. I think I just have to minimize the time. Was there something that prompted you to? Was there some threshold you had to hit where you said, okay, now we're ready to make this full time and I can just focus on this all the time?
Yeah, I think so. Like being a content creator, it's really like it can be really inconsistent. But I was able to reach like a certain amount that I was making, where I was like, okay, I can decide to make this like full time, and it was like a sustainable amount.
So it was mostly driven by just like, okay, I feel comfortable that there will be another brand deal and
Yeah.
another brand deal.
Or I was able to like compare to the salary that I used to make, and I was like, okay, I'm getting there. I'm close to what I used to make when I was working at Disney. So I was like, okay, I can definitely take, and also like it's just given me more time to focus and create more content too, instead of having to focus on something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't imagine having to do this or trying to do it part time when I see how the work goes.
It's doable, but now I can like take the time, and also like I think a big part of it now is like I feel like all the platforms are creating ways where you don't need to you don't need to make money necessarily through doing sponsored content. So that's also been very helpful as well. So like for TikTok, we have the TikTok Creator Fund where you get paid based on how many views and engagement you get. On YouTube, they have a similar one. I forgot what the name of it is, but you get paid for YouTube Shorts if you reach like when you have a certain amount of followers. And Meta is also doing the same thing with Instagram and Facebook too.
So that's actually the next thing we're going to talk about. One of the ways that they're trying to differentiate themselves. I don't even know how familiar you are with it yet, but literally, YouTube just announced a change where they're going to start a revenue share. It sounds more like what happens when you post a regular YouTube video.
Yep.
And they're going to do that through Shorts. I don't know how they're going to come up with
I saw
sharing revenue of
there's like a new, so basically like the original way to join the YouTube Partner Program to be able to qualify for that money is you needed, I think, 1,000 followers and then 4,000 hours of watch time on your videos. But now they're creating a second alternative way where you still need 1,000 followers, but you need 10 million Shorts views and you can qualify for the program. It's a lot, but I think it's doable within a 90-day period. So I think they're putting a lot of effort into YouTube Shorts. For me, like I've actually it's pretty fun because I've always thought that I kind of want to try YouTube and do long form, but then they came out with Shorts and I was like, perfect. And the YouTube algorithm is definitely the strangest one out of all of them, but it's kind of exciting as well.
It's good. I don't know how much we've talked about this, but my class knows this very well. My client is Google. And yes, they care a lot about YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
They know everything about TikTok and what's going on and where they sit in the pecking order. That's for sure. And I think you'll be hearing more from YouTube.
I'm very excited.
So you're doing this full time. You have now two co-stars, if you will. But the other reality is that you shoot most of the content at your home.
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about boundaries? I mean, in fact, I think I first connected with you because I knew your husband before.
Yeah.
When he wasn't your husband, from previous places and working together. But can you talk about how do you think about boundaries? Because you're opening up your whole your life really to whomever might see it. It's not really just about the dogs. You guys are in the videos too.
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's definitely several boundaries we have to put just because we are showing where we live and stuff like that. Well, I guess the first boundary I can talk about is I don't ever force Tofu and Boshi to film if they're not feeling like they're filming. Because for me, Tofu and Boshi are my dogs first, and then they're content creators. So if they don't feel like filming, I'm not going to force them to do anything they don't want to do or anything that makes them uncomfortable. So that's like the first boundary, and that's something like when I work with brands, I let them know like, hey, like I always inflate the timeline a little bit because just in case if Tofu and Boshi don't feel like filming, I also tell all the brands like I can't guarantee that I'll get Tofu and Boshi together in a video. It depends on who wants to film that day, and for the most part, Boshi is the one who loves getting filmed. She just likes to nap now, so I just let Boshi do all this stuff. So another boundary that I put is like whenever we go places, I don't share the IG stories until after I leave. And I also make sure when I share anything, there are no visible street signs or street numbers on there because I don't want people to know where I live. I'm just really paranoid about that stuff. And I've also had like, I've got for some of my posts, I've received like some negative comments about like death threats and things like that, and I just don't want any of those people to know where I live. And yeah, that's kind of like, I'm trying to think if there's any more, but those are, and I don't do meetups anymore with people as well. I used to, like, people would be vacationing, they'd be visiting from like New York or somewhere, they'd be like, can we meet up with Tofu and Boshi? I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. But like, if you ever like I can send you like a sticker, but Tofu particularly doesn't really like going out as much as she used to, so and that's what I usually say to people.
That term meetup, that used to be such a YouTuber thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, I think YouTubers would say that all the time. They would do meetups and that kind of thing. But now it actually seems a little crazy, just given the state of everything and COVID and everything else.
That's like the COVID aspect of it too. Like I think during COVID, I had several other Corgi accounts who would reach out and they'd be like, let's collaborate and make a video together. I was like, not during COVID, not during the pandemic. We're gonna stay home. Maybe afterwards, but to be honest, I don't really take. I feel like when Tofu was younger, so Tofu used to be like super social and extroverted when she was younger. But as she's grown older, she's very dog selective. She loves people, but she has certain dog friends, and those are her best friends, and she will play with them. But she doesn't like other dogs. And so now, whenever, when she was younger, I would meet up with a lot of other Corgi content creators and we would make videos. And like one time, me and like 10 other Corgis, we dressed up our Corgis as hot dogs and we walked around the Century City Mall together. It was a fun time. But she doesn't like that stuff anymore, unless like her friends or her particular Corgi friends are there. So I don't usually do like meetups or collabs with other accounts anymore. She doesn't want you to stop.
Yeah, that's fine. Joke's on her. I don't want to stop. Okay, so I want to be cognizant of time. I have just a couple other questions for you. We're going to go a little bit down a somewhat negative place, but I'll pull us back out so that we end on a high note. You mentioned like a death threat or what have you. But I've also seen, I remember some of your posts responding to, it wasn't a death threat, but they were pretty vile comments that you've gotten, racist and other hate-filled type comments. Can you speak to, one, how you receive those? Because I can't imagine you're just trying to do your thing. And then two, how you respond to them and how you choose to respond to them.
Yeah, so back, like, I would say in, like, 2020, so ever since I started, you want to come down?
She's playing.
So back in 2021, or actually even since I started Tofu's account, sometimes, whenever me or my husband were in the video, we would get comments about, because my husband's Vietnamese American, Asian as well, and we would get comments for things such as like, oh, like, are you gonna eat your dog? Is that why you named it Tofu? Oh yeah, absolutely horrible, not funny. But I would say in 2020 and 2021, that was when the comments I would get them every day. people would be like, oh, like, when are you gonna cook your dog? Or like that dog looks delicious, haha. Or like he looks like he's really like that. Or people write like, oh, that guy looks really hungry. Maybe he should eat the dog, referring to my husband. And it was just like, I don't know. It's just kind of like, here I am. I'm just trying to make some fun videos with my dog, and these people are saying things like that to me, and it was really frustrating. Because I know if I wasn't Asian, I wouldn't be getting those comments. Like none of my other content creator friends had ever dealt with anything like that. So normally I would just kind of ignore them or block them, but then sometimes they would see that I blocked them. They would create a different Instagram account and then be like, "Hi, you thought you could block me, but I'm back." And it was just like really weird. And initially I didn't really respond to them, but then in 2020, 2021, there was just so many, and I was just like so annoyed. And it was also like when Stop Asian Hate was happening and everything like that. So I ended up creating. There was this trend on TikTok at the time where you would take like your hate comments or like and stuff like that and turn them into like motivational posters. So I did one where I took 6 of the racist comments I did and I shared them as motivational posters on TikTok and Instagram. And I decided, I was like, I'm not gonna hide these people's names because these people wrote these comments publicly on my account. So if they're comfortable saying that, then they should be comfortable getting the attribution for their quote. And I shared that, and I guess like people didn't realize, like a lot of my followers didn't realize like I was getting those comments. And they didn't realize that like, yeah, even like as a dog account, like I still have like encounter racists. It's pretty crazy. I'm really glad I did speak out about it. I ended up turning it into like kind of like a fundraiser opportunity. And I sell tofu stickers, but like I actually now I think we raised like $3,000 that I was able to donate to stop AAPI hate, and my friend was able to double that contribution for me. So it ended up being a good thing, and I think it just also was just another moment of just like creating awareness that like these things could happen to anybody, even the cute corgi on the internet.
So can you, which I mean, it's amazing, especially the way you've turned a negative into a positive. It's really impressive. Can you speak a little bit about your decision to, we're coming up on an election now. We had an election back, obviously, 2020, and you publicly, through your account, publicly expressed your political views. Can you talk a little bit about how you were thinking when you went down that path? Were you worried that people might react negatively, or that you might alienate some of your followers?
Yeah, I think the last election was a pretty critical election, I would say, and I don't know, in a way I felt uncomfortable not saying anything about it, but I also felt scared because I didn't know what the reaction would be. And I remember when, I don't know, it was one of those moments where I was like, I have this platform, like, and something I do is right now, I'm going to start it next month too, is like I encourage people to vote in the upcoming elections, and everybody who shows me proof that they voted, I send them a free tofu or Boshi sticker that says I voted, so they get like a cute like corgi version of the I voted sticker. But in the 2020 election, that was just a pretty critical election, and I felt like there were so many issues that, like, I felt like by not speaking out, I wouldn't feel good about myself. And I fully anticipated losing like half of my following. But I felt like, what's the point of having following if you're not gonna like use it to do what I think is some good? So I did come out with who I was voting for that year, and surprisingly, I did not lose any followers. I actually gained more followers. Wasn't what I anticipated. And I also I don't know, that I did actually have a lot of followers who had opposing views who were surprising, like, you know what? I don't agree with you, but we can agree to disagree. I still really love tofu. which was great. But there were also definitely people who were like, yeah, we're not following you anymore. And I was like, that's fine. It's okay. And a lot of people were saying like, this is a dog account. I'm like, yeah, but it's my dog account. I can do what I want with it. So yeah, but it was definitely a scary time, but it ended up being something that I'm personally really proud of. And everybody here, if you're for the U.S. election next month, make sure you go vote. And I'll send you a tofu sticker. So.
So, I appreciate that as well. So, all right, last question I have is, you recently started your own personal account for you, Tiffany.
Yeah.
What made you want to do that? Was it sort of the reverse of like, wow, all the people that are following them, I need my own, you need your own personal space?
I think it was driven more by because like I've been so fortunate that I get to do a lot of I get to attend a lot of really fun and interesting events because of Tofu. But it's weird for me to post that on Tofu's page when Tofu's not there at the event with me. So I started that account as a way of like, okay, I can like for me personally start like a little diary of all the cool things that I get to do because of Tofu. So like I got invited to Instagram has this really big event where they invite content creators to the beach in Malibu, and it's something I've always wanted to go to. So I was like, I can't post that on my account because Tofu, I couldn't bring Tofu with me, but I could post that on my personal account. But also, I think over the years of running Tofu's account, I have found a love for video editing. So I really enjoy kind of like the storytelling a little bit, and I have other interests that are outside of Tofu and Boshi, and I'm a really big anime watcher. I collect anime figurines. I really love trying new food, so I wanted to start a separate account for me to create my own content that's like about the stuff that I enjoy outside of Tofu and Boshi. But their account is still like my number one priority, but the other one's more like a hobby thing on the side.
Okay, I can appreciate that too. Yeah, I want to talk to you about that crazy statue figurine thing you have from Attack on Titan.
Oh.
So, okay, best experience you've had in this whole journey? Besides this class, obviously.
I think the best thing about running Tofu's account is I get so many messages from people telling me that they love Tofu, and like watching the videos on our account has helped them in some way, shape, or form. Like there are a lot of people, like especially during like midterms or final seasons, I get a lot of messages from college students saying like, I'm so stressed out from midterms, but that video of Boshi like really made me cheered me up. Even right before this class, I was walking Tofu on campus, and this girl came up to me, and she was like, oh my god, Tofu, I wanted to come meet you. And she told me she'd met Tofu 4 years ago, back when I was a grad student here. And after she met Tofu, she went and got her own corgi. And like hearing that kind of stuff, like wow, like I don't know, it makes me feel really like fuzzy and warm inside to know that somebody else got a corgi because of Tofu.
Definitely making an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. So, I want to I think we covered a lot, which is great. Thank you so much for taking that much time. And this superstar has just been so patiently sitting here. He's just amazing. I'm sure those of you who had dogs are thinking the way I am, that my dog wouldn't dream unless he passed out and was asleep. He would never sit that patiently for that long. It was just amazing. She is clearly a superstar. But I do want to give anyone in the room an opportunity to ask any questions we haven't covered. Yeah. Let's see how we can do this.
I think I'll speak up.
You can speak.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. And I first of all, before asking my question, I really appreciate the way you handled hate comments, because while listening to your story, I was just thinking, if I would have been at that place, I would be in a terrible state and might also end up, closing the account or something, because I totally understand that what people actually do. But my question was that, since I think you started long back in 2015 on Instagram, and like now these days there are so many more content creators and so many more things that are trending, and it's so hard to catch up. So what would your like advice or suggestion be to people who want to start off now in like current and like what level of competition we have right now? So how you can give?
That is a really good question.
So did you all hear the question? Everyone hear that? So she said, what advice would you have for someone who's starting out now as a content creator, recognizing that it's not 2015 anymore? There's a lot more competition. There are far more content creators out there, far more platforms to deal with, etc. And now, advice.
That's a good question. I think now is the best time to start, to be honest. So back in 2015, when I was posting on Instagram, my content was limited to the people who followed me, essentially, and then, or if they found me through a hashtag, you know. But right now, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels, all of these platforms with their algorithms, they're trying to find the best audience for your video, you know? And I think the key thing is when you're creating content on these platforms, making your video easy to find and making sure that your video is categorized. So like, what do I mean by that? Like, I'm gonna talk about like TikTok specifically, right? Like TikTok just, I forgot if it was from TikTok itself, but there was an article talking about how TikTok, how a lot of people, Gen Z specifically, they're searching for things on TikTok instead of Google. It's crazy, right? But it's true. Now, when I travel to places and I'm looking up certain venues or like certain restaurants, I actually search on TikTok first because I want to see those reviews. So when you post something on TikTok, you definitely find the hashtags that work with whatever video you're making, but also make sure the caption you're writing is like SEO friendly, if that makes sense, with like the right keywords. And so Todd mentioned earlier, I started my own account and I've been posting mostly on TikTok, and I had 0 followers on TikTok, right? And I collect anime figurines, and I built this really extremely big display case to store my figurines in, and I decided, I was like, okay, 0 followers, right? I'm gonna make a video about my display case. And then I went to TikTok and I searched display case, and then it shows you what people would write when they were searching for display case. So I took all those key terms, I put it into the video, into the caption, and I made it like, I wrote like a paragraph or something, but made it like flow, of course. And I posted it, and you know, initially it didn't do anything, but as of right now, I think I'm at 270,000 views on that video.
Wow.
Yeah, and 0 followers. And that's like the best thing, because like Reels does the same thing. They're trying to find the people who will engage with your video, and same thing with YouTube Shorts. So I know it's like the hardest part is just getting started, but once you kind of get started, it becomes easier. And just making sure your caption is, and the other thing, like on every platform, when you can, try to use their native text features. So like, you know how like when you're using like what I used to do was I would create a video off the platform, right? I wouldn't make the video on TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram. I use a separate app to make my videos, and I would use that app to add text to my caption or to the video itself. And then I would post the video on all the platforms. But what I didn't realize at the time was that the TikTok algorithm, Instagram Reels algorithm, and YouTube algorithm, they actually process the words that are in your video, like not just the caption, like what you're writing in the video. They include that in how they like process their videos. So now what I do is I create the blank video on InShot, and then afterwards I go to TikTok and I add the text in manually from TikTok. Sometimes I add in the text manually on Instagram, but sometimes the Instagram Reels fonts don't look as good, so then I'll use something else. And then I try to do the same thing on YouTube too, and that helps with discoverability of your video. So you should just start. it's also pretty fun to be able to like kind of look back and be like, oh, I made these videos about whatever I was experiencing or wearing or eating at the time.
Thank
Water.
you. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Thank you for sharing the experience. It was really insightful. So, do you predict any shift in the way influencer marketing would change, given that COVID-19 had, kind of extended a platform for a lot of nano influence and micro influencers as well? So, any sort of change we can predict in the way influencer marketing would change?
For me, I've noticed a bigger emphasis, like when brands come to me, they want to work with me on TikTok. And they're not as interested in Instagram anymore. And I've also this was the first year where I've had brands come to me and they wanted me to make videos for them, but they didn't want me to post it. So they wanted, so I think I don't know if anybody was on TikTok maybe a few months ago, but there was this big trend of user-generated content, UGC, and how you can make money from that. But this was the first year where I received a UGC request where they wanted me to make a video of tofu with their product, and then they would just pay me for that, and they did not want me to post it. So I feel like that's where the general trend is going, because I think what a lot of brands are seeing is that when they have content that doesn't look like it was made in a studio for thousands of dollars, when it's somebody in their bedroom talking about how much they love this bottle of perfume or something like that, that gets more clicks and more interest compared to something that was made perfectly and beautifully, if that makes sense. So I think there's definitely a trend towards that UGC and specifically TikTok as well.
Any questions? Once. Twice. Anything else? Thank you for coming, Tofu's grandparents.
I also tried to put my music box on TikTok. For 3 months, I only got 55 likes.
She was
We can work on that.
Okay.
You know what? It's just start. That's
Yeah.
my advice to you is just start. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and taking all this time. I really appreciate it. I know, and thank you all for spending this much time with us too. I know a lot of you, as I said, were not just forced to do it because you're my class. So thank you all for taking time out of your Monday evening.
I brought stickers for everyone if anybody
And I
wants.
was gonna say, you guys were great, and I think there's some stickers. Those in my class have seen it on my laptop.
Well, thank you so much for having us and having tofu as well. Looks like
She's
she's getting a
been-
lot of really good treats out of it.
She has been amazing. So anyway, thank you very much.
Wait, can I get a quick video of you guys really quickly? I'm going to, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. I think I might turn Tofu's chair around and then just film you guys for a few seconds because it's not often you get to guest speak for a class, right, Tofu? Oh yeah, my BeReal. I'm going to do my BeReal first. Look at me. I got Tofu in the back as well. Alright, I'm gonna take a quick video of you guys, okay? If you guys wanna wave or do anything. You did such a good job. Thank you guys.